Welcome to APW Market Wrap number 153. Stuart Williamson here at the helm. Just giving out a bit of information, a bit of knowledge to our clients and potential buyers to make decisions to buy property in the UK. Now this week, no house price boom for today's buyers. Their parents have stolen that from them, according to an OBR economist. New homeowners getting on the property ladder today will not benefit from the previous generation's growth, according to a senior figure in the government spending watchdog, the OBR, David Miles, a senior economist at the Office of Budget Responsibility, oxymoron if I've ever heard one, said that the age of massive rises in house prices may be nearing its end. He said the house price surge seen in recent decades was unlikely to be repeated because of slowing population growth, rising interest rates, and an increase in working from home. Mr. Miles said in a speech, if anything, this unusual age of massive rises of house prices may be nearing its very end. Those forces driving them up are going to be much weaker, I suspect, he said, in the next 40 years than they have been in the last 40 years. The comments suggest that people who buy homes today will unlikely be able to use their properties to retire on as previous generations have. Ms. Miles is one of the members of the top committee at the OBR, which scrutinises public finances, and that basically is him saying it's not going to be so great buying going forward. Now, real house prices have outpaced inflation since the 1970s and they've outpaced income growth. Prices grew particularly rapidly in the decade after the financial crisis as low interest rates fueled borrowing. The average home cost $288,000 in February this year, according to the ONS, Office of National Statistics, an increase of around 91% since 2005. House prices have risen faster in the UK than in many other similar countries because building has failed to keep pace with population growth, commented Mr. Miles. However, with interest rates now rising and birth rates declining in the coming years, he said this was probably unlikely to continue. Mr. Miles has also previously published research showing that land and house prices decline after a rise in working from home, as people have greater choice of where they live, so that's another negative aspect. His comments came as new figures from the ONS showed the number of families in the UK has increased by just over 1 million in the decade 2022. In addition, migration is now hitting 500,000 for this year as a minimum, and likely to become the average, according to the FT. Net migration has surged since Brexit and is expected to break new records at well over 500,000 this year and 500,000 every year going forward. Now, next news. Michael Gove prepares to rip up the Landlords rulebook. Okay, Michael Gove is after the landlords, as we know, and they're now facing the biggest overhaul they've had in years, both landlords and tenants, as the new rental report has come out and is now going through Parliament. Housing Secretary Michael Gove has said that he would change the way in which the relationship between landlords and tenants works, providing tenants with new protection which should ensure that they are better protected from arbitrary rent increases. So what are the changes that are coming out, which is so important for landlords and us as investors? Section 21, no-fault evictions to be scrapped by landlords. They now need to provide specific reasons whether a tenant should be kicked out. Introduction of rolling tenancies. In other words, tenancies will automatically continue rather than just being fixed. So no 12 months, no 24 months, rolling. Rent increase notice to double to 2 months, and rent cannot be increased more than once a year. Quick fault-based evictions procedures. The government has suggested that rent arrears and antisocial behaviour evictions will be fast-tracked to have tenants kicked out. Landlords unable to reasonably refuse pets, although pet insurance for the risk of damage must be taken by the tenant. Landlords portal where tenants can rate their landlords. Tenants can rate the landlords, a bit like check a trade. Looking at their history and their behaviour and score them is a new thing. A property ombudsman, new single ombudsman to be introduced to resolve landlord and tenant disputes. This already applies to landlords with letting agents, but will be extended to private landlords now. Repeated serious rent arrears are mandatory are mandatory grounds for eviction. This will go some way to closing the current loophole where tenants can avoid evictions based on rent arrears, providing they pay the arrears up before the possession hearing. Minimum housing standards. Called the Decent Home Standard, this currently applies to social housing and will be extended to the private rental sector. No ban on benefits or their families. So if they can pay the rent, landlords cannot reject them. Okay, even if you don't want children or benefit people. Reaction to the bill by the public. According to the Telegraph, these are some quotes. This bill deprives me of any meaningful sense of what my property would remain like in the future. Would it remain mine? John Kester says, I've been a Conservative member for decades and indeed a donor. Your bill is the reason why I will not donate again and I'll not vote for you ever again. I've served notice on my 2 tenants and will be selling my 2 properties in an area where the private rental sector has dropped 71% in 5 years, and the local council is sending leaflets offering incentives to rent to key workers. Your bill deprives me of any meaningful sense in which my property would remain mine. It's social nonsense. Gove is a man with a petrol can thinking he's putting out fires. That's pretty damning. That gentleman doesn't like Mr. Gove. Another comment from Darren Ainsworth, another Telegraph reader, says, no good landlord ever wants to evict good tenants, and so those currently with good tenants would now likely sell once their current tenants decide to leave, rather than risk inviting a new untouchable rogue tenant into their property and making their lives a living hell. Gove's 2-week social clause is pure fantasy and will never work. Fundamentally, a landlord has no control over their own property, but the government and the left-wingers, tenant-loving courts do. It's a wreck, all caused by the government's failure to control immigration and build enough new houses. Economically, it's a total disaster. Existing tenants will become fearful of terminating their tenancy as they will find it impossible to get a new one. Landlords will also be required to increase rents to cover increased costs, making it even harder for tenants to save for their own home. Gove is a man who should not. A gentleman called K. Jig said, I rented in another country outside Europe for 10 years, really beautiful places, and as my salaries increased, I moved to somewhere even better. One problem in the UK is renting is seen as a permanent situation, and it's not. There is too much interference. There needs to be some base laws for safety, although I don't remember being in any danger when I lived in the properties overseas that were far superior to anything in the UK. It is best to leave it to the market. The more property available, the more tenants can choose and landlords can increase the quality. If the number of properties available dries up, then the landlords will have the power, and what we're seeing here in London is people offering a year's rent in advance to ensure where they can rent. What appears to be unique to the UK is tenants trashing a property, and in all my time abroad, I never once had that. Good landlords should not I never had that. All the properties were looked after, and they weren't. There was an attachment to earnings in places like Sweden to get the monies back that had been spent on redoing the flats. Stephen Donovan says, I don't think good landlords should unduly worry at the moment, assuming you are not the type of landlord that sweats their assets and doesn't invest and is not in it for the long term. The key thing is to have a good agent that gets and checks prospective tenants, as well as the ability to pay and accept whatever costs come out. Stay ahead of the game legally. Don't get involved with legal actions. Look after your clients correctly. I would concur with that last gentleman. Frankly, my experience has been with tenants, if you buy them a bottle of champagne on their birthday, send them a bottle of something, send them flowers, that sort of stuff, paint the house when it doesn't need painting, add extra little bits of value, you will keep and get good tenants. If you don't do that, that'll be a very hard time for you. So basically what we've seen today is, according to the Telegraph, the latest Michael Gove rental changes are absolute disgrace. Whether that's true or not, I wouldn't comment. Socially, it does seem that they are overdue to a certain extent. But I think a lot of it is just, there's some rogue landlords that are really causing trouble. And it's those people. In fact, I've had clients saying to me that they just want to buy cheap stuff they can rent out to anyone and squash as many people in as possible. I don't agree with that. And I think if you do that, then you are going to be heading for a fall. But if you're a good landlord, that's not the case. As far as what the OBR is saying about our future growth has been stolen by our parents, or in my case, I have stolen my children's growth, potential for housing, I don't really think that is the case, because it's not all about houses going up in price. It's about getting a good tenant who pays your mortgage off. So you're putting 30% down and getting 100% back, and perhaps you might even get another 20%, 30%, 50% rental increase. Capital increase on it. That's good stuff. That's how it should be. So that's Market Wrap number 153. It's been Stuart Williamson here at the helm. Why do we do it? Just to spread some information and share the love. Do like, subscribe, please, if you can, and comment if you want to make comments about what I'm saying and whether you think it makes sense or not. Thank you very much. Cheerio.